Like people have two sets of resources, right, that they allocate. So they've got time and they've got money.
Yeah.
And so if you look at someone's bank statement and you look at their calendar, you know what their life is. And you can also predict where their life is going to be in X amount of years, right? And so if someone wants to change what their life is going to look like, you have to reallocate where you're investing the resources that you have. And so from a time perspective, people who are poor, in my opinion, spend a lot of time not doing stuff. And that sounds terrible to say, but like at the base level, they're distracted,
they're not doing the right stuff.
Right. Well, I would even say not doing anything.
Just distracting them.
Right.
Playing
Just
video games.
Netflix, etc. All that stuff, right? So there's like the base is like they don't do anything. They're purely distracting themselves from their current state, which is hard because it's hard to confront reality. If you're like not happy, it's easier to just distract yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the level above that is you've got people who are operating, they are working every day, but they're operating in low leverage opportunities, right? So they're doing things that do not give them a lot of return on their time, right? And so it's like I could work, it doesn't matter how many hours I work at McDonald's, it's very, very difficult to become wealthy there, right? It's just near impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus like you could buy a building for $10 million and then sell it to somebody else for $11 million, just get the contract and make $1 million on the exchange. Super high leverage, right? From a time perspective, which is crazy for somebody who doesn't have money to even contemplate something like that. But the only way that happened, and that required no money, is skill, right? And so like that's an example of like it didn't require money to make that money. That's skill that's required to do that. And so first is the time, right? People are not doing stuff with the time that they have, or they're doing low leverage activities with the time they have. And then they're not trying to increase their output per unit time, which means investing in their skill set. So like one of the easiest ways to gain leverage on your time, and when I say leverage, just for everybody, like leverage is the difference between inputs and outputs in a system. So, Archimedes said, if you give me a lever long enough, I can move the world. And so to the same degree, if you have enough skills, you can do anything, right? And so skills give you leverage on your time. So you get more out of each unit of time. So if I'm a master cold caller, I will get more sales and calls booked for the same unit of time than somebody who sucks at it. Same time, more output, right?
But because they developed a skill at a masterful level.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when people are allocating their time, they're not by percentage, they're kind of like consuming their time rather than investing their time. So they're either doing nothing or they're consuming the time rather than putting time into getting higher returns on their time, which is education, right? And so education you can have from like the conceptual learnings, watching stuff like this, or the actual doing, right? And so, you learn
taking
more
action,
100%.
Failing, messing up, feeling like an embarrassment in the actions. Yeah.
The first 1,000 cold calls you make, the first 1,000 cold emails you do, the first 1,000 doors you knock on, the first 1,000, you'll learn more from that than you'll learn from every single book you read up to that point on the concept. You'll learn, right? And so people don't allocate nearly enough time to that in the beginning. And so I think one of the things that the formal education system did really well, that people poo-poo on it, is the idea of going into debt to gain education is something that fundamentally makes sense.
Yes, but it's got to be the right education that can make you money.
You got to get a return on it.
Yes.
That's the issue, right? You have to get a return on it because the idea of borrowing from a future self that can make more money to pay for the thing that you're getting the skill for makes total sense. I think Elon was saying something about how Neuralink in the future, it's going to be such a competitive advantage that they could price it at whatever they want, because once you have it, you'll be so much more able than anyone who doesn't have it that you could so easily pay off the price of the thing. That's how it should work conceptually, right?
Crazy.
So education is supposed to work.
Yes.
And so this is the simplest example that I have. So a friend of mine has a 17-year-old daughter. She got a job at a bowling alley and she makes minimum wage. And he said, why don't you become a phlebotomist? And she was like, well, I don't want to spend the money. He's like, it's $500 and it's a 2-day certification. And then after you have that, you make $25 an hour. So she didn't have the money. Now she could save it to get the $500, right? Or she could take a loan for the $500 from her dad and pay it back in a week, right? Because she has higher earning capacity. And so it was like she could either save for 8 weeks, right, from her bowling alley to pay the $500, or she could take a loan for the $500, do the 2 days, and then pay it off in a week. So at that 1 week, she now has 7 more weeks of earning capacity. This is a micro example, right? 7 more weeks of earning capacity at her new level, and she'd be net positive on the next 7 weeks of earnings, right? And so that's just a micro example of what skill investing does. And so that, because a lot of us talk about you got to get educated, you got to learn stuff, and like you learn stuff by doing it. And a lot of times you pay for that education or access to people who can teach you those skills, because a lot of people aren't going to give it to you for free. And that makes sense. It's okay.
Right,
Like it took them time to learn the thing, and they compressed that time to give it to you. So I mean, that's why I'm if there's one thing that's my like life's mission, it's education.